My daughter, I asked her, when are you getting married? And then she told me never.
Welcome back to the Property Podcast. Today we're tackling the question most couples are too scared to ask: who really owns what in a marriage? And joining us is someone who's seen some of the wildest real-life cases. Joining us today is Atty. Jem Madamba, a seasoned litigation lawyer with a strong background in public service and legislation. She earned her behavioral science degree from the University of Santo Tomas and her law degree from San Sebastian College of Law. Attorney Madambas worked extensively in both the House of Representatives and the Senate, served as a legal legislative staffer and political affairs officer, and has also taught at the university level. She currently heads Law Office and Immigration Services, where she's actively engaged in litigation practice and legal consultancy, bringing together experience in law, policy, and governance. Welcome to the show, Attorney Jem.
Thank you.
But before that, I want to ask first of how you decided to become a lawyer. Because I think it's interesting. You know, I feel like law, being a doctor, is kind of sort of a calling or a vocation.
Okay.
Would you say it was the same for you?
I'm a graduate of behavioral science. So that's industrial psychology. So
I'm a psych grad also. I think I
Yes.
mentioned that when
Yes,
we met.
and then I said I want to take up medicine. I want to become a psychiatrist.
So parang nasa crossroads ka.
But probably it's already in me at that time. There's already a desire. Wala nga lang pang fire.
So tell me
Oh.
how, I guess let's move on a bit more towards your actual law career. How did you get into this specific segment of law?
Because I wanted to practice. That's it. Litigation. So in litigation, we don't have a specialization.
Yes.
You are to create your specialization once you become a lawyer. My thoughts is that when I finish law school, I will be an officer of the court.
Yeah. I remember, okay, if you guys didn't know how me and Attorney Jem met also, we just so happened to meet in a closing of a certain property. And she
Yes,
was the
through
authority.
Hillary. Oh.
Yes, we were representing the seller and she was representing the buyer in that particular transaction. And I don't know, we just hit it off. Nakipag-chika tayo inside the bank.
You know?
Tapos naging friends na tayo
Yes,
agad.
masaya.
And I said, Attorney Jem, I have to see you again. Remember?
Yes,
I
and
said,
then I told you, of course.
Ma'am, you need to see us again. Me and Hillary also, especially.
Yes.
So I'm so happy that you're here today. And it's really relevant because I remember a lot of what we talked about. I asked you, what are the types of cases that you tend to like to handle?
I do not choose cases. I was taught by my mentors, the older lawyers in the office, to just accept whatever if I want to stay in litigation.
Yes.
So I could learn.
So a lot of what we kind of want to talk about today kasi is more practical questions that
Okay.
people have, diba, usually when it comes to properties and properties, especially when you get married.
Oh, yeah.
Parang hindi na siya masyadong uso ngayon kasi to get married young. I don't know if you've noticed.
Oh, yes, I've noticed.
But a lot of people now.
My daughter, she's turning 20.
Okay.
I asked her, when are you getting married? And it's just a joke. It was just a joke.
Yeah.
And then she told me never. That.
But that's not an uncommon answer for a lot of youth today. You,
Probably that's not.
kasama naman tayo dun sa you.
Oh, yeah. You. Probably not me.
But diba, that's a normal answer for them to say
Yes.
that.
But probably she was just saying it. Maybe because everyone, her friends, they're
Hindi
saying,
uso sa kanila.
yes, hindi talaga uso sa kanila. Oh.
Pero uso siya dati. Like, people would just like, they'd get married because they got pregnant or something like that.
Oh, yes. I think because mas exposed and magaling na yung mga bata these days, they know what they want.
Yes. And they get married for the right reason.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they
Yes.
want to be together.
Yes, yes.
I think, like, let's talk about
they're
marriage.
practical also.
Correct. Let's talk about marriage, I guess, in the aspect of why people should still be getting married. For you, as someone who's handled a lot of annulment cases, is there any reason for us to still get married these days?
Of course, commitment. You know, when you get married, you're protected under our laws, the general laws, the specific laws pertaining to the marriage obligations of the spouses for each other, and also properties.
On the topic of marriage also, uso na ngayon because wala nga masyadong gusto magpakasal. Mas uso na ngayon yung pag-live-in. Some
Yes,
people are
a
living in
lot
right
of
now.
couples are in that situation. But you know, if you're going to ask me,
Yeah.
there's no right answer. That depends upon the beliefs, values of the person.
Yeah.
If they're thinking about practicality, it's a compatibility test. Sometimes they would really look at it that way.
Iba talaga yung tao pag you live with them na eh. Mas
Yes.
sila versus
Yes.
like,
Yes.
you just have dinner together.
Yes.
Iba yung parang pagising nila, ganito yung itsura nila.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
It makes a difference, especially when you get married. But do you think it's a good idea to live in before getting married?
I told you a while ago that there's no right answer.
Yeah.
But personally, I'm still like the old fashioned lady. Like I was told once in a wedding ceremony I attended.
Of all settings.
Yes.
Wedding talaga.
Wedding talaga. And there's this beautiful message given by one of our pastors in church for a relationship, a boyfriend and girlfriend relationship, for it to be successful, to maintain the love for each other, then you should be in love in that relationship. You worked for it. You have to stay in love to be together.
And that's hard work. It's a
Yes.
choice also.
Yes. But in a marriage, it is the marriage that will sustain the love for each other. So it's different.
There's a lot more commitment.
Of course.
And obligation, legally.
Of course. Of course.
Just
of
why we're
course.
here today.
Yes. When you talk about finances, obligations, properties, relationships outside your family, extended family, you really have to have this commitment, which in a marriage, you'll be able to sustain that because you signed a contract.
You're
And-
minded to.
Yes.
Essentially. I mean, kung gugustuhin mo nga, pero
Yes. And you can be penalized for not.
fulfilling your obligation.
Yes.
I have a question though. We hear it in a lot of cases on what marriages and the property regimes that are in the marriage. What exactly is a property regime in a
Okay.
marriage?
Oh, we have our family code.
Yes.
Um,
Which is based on.
Sometime in August of 1988, it was enacted, the Family Code of the Philippines. The default property regime of married couples in the Philippines is the absolute community of property.
ACP.
We have three.
Okay.
We have the complete separation of property, the conjugal partnership, and then we have the absolute community. Here, on or after the effectivity, your property regime is the absolute community of property, meaning all your properties
Before and after.
before and after the marriage belongs to the both of you together. So a special co-ownership is different. We have another one, the fourth one. I always tell this that there's a fourth one for those who are living together as common law husband and wives. So this is a special co-ownership. But another property regime,
Ay, madami pala. Wait, can you review? So first and foremost,
first,
you have the one
the absolute community.
which is effective today based on the
Yes.
Family Code of 1988.
Yes.
ACT or absolute community of property. Prior to 1988, it was conjugal.
Conjugal partnership of gains.
Conjugal partnership of gains. The third would be
The complete separation of property. But we can only do that, a complete separation of property, if there is a marriage settlement.
which is the prenup.
Yes, a prenup. A prenup, it's an agreement, as a marriage settlement agreement, where you can choose or you can put the separation of property. But that's not automatic. You cannot just agree verbally. Even in writing, you cannot just enter into a settlement agreement without following the necessary requirements under the law. It should be duly notarized, signed by all the parties, and it must be registered prior to the marriage.
Prior to
The marriage. If it's not registered, it will be considered void. So when you enter the church,
Or the court.
yes, you must have registered that prenuptial agreement first. It is usually prepared with your marriage license. When you're preparing for your marriage license, it should be submitted along with your marriage license. And then if there are several properties listed, you should also submit that with the proper government office or the registry of deeds.
Oh, shucks.
Yes.
So it's multiple things. I thought it was something as simple as
Come on, let's agree. We enter into a prenuptial agreement. We can do that.
have people tried to, let's say, retroactively, kunwari, they got married, nagkagulo. Did they try to retroactively enforce a prenuptial agreement?
No, you cannot do that. The law is clear. It should be prepared, signed with all the requirements prior to your marriage.
Sa mga magpapakasal, alam nyo na.
But you can always agree on a different regime after. A property regime after the marriage can be agreed upon with the parties later on. but you should go to court.
So there's a separate procedure. If you,
yes,
let's say you're already
it's
married,
a judicial separation of properties.
that's the only thing you can choose. You can't choose na magko-conjugal kayo.
You can choose.
You can also.
Yes.
So default is ACP.
ACP, and then prenup. You can
Prenup.
enter into an agreement as regards properties and finances in a prenup, and then you can choose the obsolete community or conjugal partnership
of gains. Okay.
and separation, the complete separation of property.
You mentioned there is a fourth one, which is co-ownership.
The co-ownership, that's for common law husbands and wife.
What's a common law husband and wife?
Those living together without the benefit of marriage, but are to be considered without legal impediment to marry each other.
Meaning they're both not married.
Yes.
Is that the only legal impediment that we're talking about?
Yes. It should not be a bigamous marriage.
May senomar sila, kumbaga.
May senomar sila. They can freely marry each other if they want later on.
So parang the law assumes na they can, they just choose not to.
Yes, but the implication of that is only as regards the property relations of the parties. Since if there is a legal impediment, like for example, if the couple, one is still married, there is an existing marriage, and then the guy had a girlfriend, the girlfriend is single, she can freely marry anyone, but there's a legal impediment on the part of the guy.
Yes.
So they live together, for example, for 8 years.
Ay, maraming kaso na ganyan para makilala nga kang ganyan.
Madami.
Diba? No, that's the usual setup.
Yes. I get calls, friends, family, and referred clients with similar situations.
Yes.
So,
let's say they're living together for 8 years.
Let's say, for example, 8 years. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, they separated.
They had a home together.
Yes.
May condo sila.
Yes. The girl is okay. And she's a homemaker because the guy can afford
and sustain.
So what will happen now? You have to have a proof that the finances, the contribution, and everything that were put together, there must be proof that the other is spent for it. So in a common law relationship, which has no legal impediment, okay, they can freely marry each other. There is the presumption of community property. The presumption is that they are co-owners and the properties are to be divided equally between the two of them. You don't need to prove anything, even if you did not contribute anything.
Okay.
So that's the difference.
Is there a certain parang number of years that they have to have been common law?
No. Even if you lived for a long time or for as long as properties are involved, I'm talking about common law relationship in general with properties.
Yeah.
It's just co-ownership, a special co-ownership, subject to proof if there's a legal impediment.
Got it. Now for the fifth one, you mentioned there's also a fifth one. Tama ba?
Oh no, the after, it's the judicial separation of properties. If you want to change the property regime at any given time during the marriage, you have to go to court. You have to go to court.
Hindi pwedeng pag-agreean nyo lang na parang, ito na yung bago nating property regime.
No, you cannot do that. That's where the protection of the law would come in if you are a married couple.
I see. Now, my other question for you is, can spouses own property individually during the marriage? And what are the rules for jointly acquired properties? Again, the property regimes will come into this question.
Since the property regime, default property regime is the obsolete community, no, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. The only time that you can have a separate property is when you inherit a property that belongs to your family.
I know that's different though for when, it depends on when you inherit it also.
Yes.
If you inherit it prior to the marriage, it comes in as community property.
The conjugal partnership, in a conjugal partnership again, there, when you acquire a property, let's give an example. Okay. For example, you have a car. Okay. I bought this car. We're getting married 3 months after. Conjugal partnership of gains. When you bought that property, that belongs to you. That's your exclusive property because you bought that prior to your marriage. Then we got married. And then I entered into a business of renting out all of my cars that I have. All the proceeds, rents, and everything that would become fruits of all that you have, that you bought prior to the marriage belongs to the two of you. So that is part of your conjugal partnership. So it's like a community property. but only as to the fruits.
May kunyari, like you mentioned nga,
But in an absolute community,
Yeah.
if you bought that car, regardless of that time, near or
10 years
far,
ago.
10 years ago, or during, after, whatever, at any given time, prior, during, and after the marriage, it's part of the absolute community. It belongs to the two of you.
Pero all I'm hearing is that if you got married after 1988,
Yeah,
ang
but
mahal mo talaga yung tao.
I'm sure hindi ko nga tinignan to. Oo.
But regardless, I think that now, if you got married talaga after 1988 and you don't plan to have a marriage settlement, kailangan you're ready for that type of
Yes.
setup.
You know, nowadays,
Yeah.
when I have clients and then they would share to me their intention of getting married,
Yeah.
and they have problems with family, or let's say there is some sort of difference or disparity when it comes to the finances
Okay.
of the couple,
Which happens more often than not.
I suggest that they enter into a prenuptial agreement. It's not so common and accepted in the Philippines, but I think there are couples nowadays that are more open. So I have had clients for, let's say, the past 4 years
Yeah.
coming to me. Development talaga siya na inaccept na
Yeah.
ang prenuptial agreement. So recently I've prepared for one. She is a client. She's a widow.
Yeah.
And then but no children.
No
She has
heirs.
a good job. The family is well off.
Okay.
And then he met this guy online. So that's what the
Oh.
family, yes. And then the family suggested,
Her family.
her family suggested. She wanted to please her family.
Yeah.
At the same time, she wanted to explain these things to the groom.
Yeah.
So we called a meeting and I talked to the both of them.
Okay.
I had to explain all these things to the guy. You know, the guy really loved the girl. And then she said, "Come on, attorney, bring out those papers. I will sign it. We will register it. There's no problem."
I guess also it's to a point na if someone will marry you, regardless, they want to be with you eh. Kasi
Yeah.
there's nothing impeding na parang,
Yeah.
hindi mo maisip na parang, ay,
Yes.
she's with me because I have this and I
Yes.
have that. It's because
Yes.
they want to be with me.
Yes. But you know, our culture
Yeah.
and then customs, we talk about our fathers, mothers, grandparents when they sit down in a round table preparing for a wedding and everything. If you are for the bride, the side of the bride,
Yeah.
it's not really so acceptable. It's like an insult. I think that's how they explain it. The sentiment of not allowing a prenuptial is because of that.
It's a cultural thing kasi
Yes.
think that the husband is supposed to
Give everything.
give everything to the
Yes,
bride.
to the bride.
And what's your take on that?
It's okay to feel that way. That's how we were raised.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it's also okay for a legal advice or a consultant to intervene if they want to explain the effects and also everything that is good about entering into a prenuptial agreement, especially when there are doubts coming from especially on the side of the bride. Often, if the groom is a rich guy, and then so rich, we're talking about inherited properties.
Yes.
This is
So
these are
a nepo
properties.
baby.
Yes, something like
Kung nepo
that.
baby si groom.
But these properties are passed on from their parents, grandparents to the children, the grandchildren. Of course, there's this sentiment on the part of for example, the family of the groom that they don't want their assets and all that they have worked hard for a long time to be wasted.
Ayaw nila
Something like that.
mawalgas.
Yes, ayaw nila mawaldas. Gusto talaga nila mangyari. Maklaim talaga nila exclusively for their family.
I see.
Yes.
Which I understand the sentiment behind that also.
Yes.
But to a point, I do feel, this is a personal opinion na lang. This is not reflective of anyone else's opinion but my
Okay.
own. But I think that if you're going to be entering into a marriage and you don't want to share anything, you might as well not get married also. To a point, I feel like you have to share
Yes,
something.
of course, because it's part of your obligation as a wife or as a spouse or as a husband to love and support each other.
Yes.
Yes, support meaning support, provisions,
Yung mga ibang tao dyan, kailangan magbasa ng,
Finances.
ng family code.
Family code. You can Google.
Or
It's there.
ChatGPT.
Or Chat GPT. It's there. But sometimes it's really different when it's being explained like this. So
It feels
I hope
more practical,
yeah.
applicable.
Yes. I think prenuptial agreements are okay nowadays.
Yeah.
I would really go for prenuptial agreements. Yes.
It's kind of the same, honestly, now on the topic of divorce, diba? With
Yes.
divorce, it doesn't mean you have to elect it at any point. Just because, let's say, divorce will be allowed. It doesn't mean na magde-divorce kayo.
Yes.
It just gives people the option who need it to elect it. You know? Same with the prenup. It doesn't mean na maghiwalay kayo at any point. Because I think that's the presumption of a lot of people. Ay, ba't kayo mag-prenup? Ano, may plano kayo maghiwalay? Diba?
Hindi totoo yun. Hindi totoo yun. That's what I tell those who come to me na please take that off your mind. We're not looking at a separation that would come soon. No, it's not like that.
Mga 25 years pa.
But you know what? In a prenuptial agreement,
Yeah.
I think it will strengthen the bond of couples if they're really willing. They willingly signed
Both
the agreement.
parties.
Yes. Because later on, they can share whatever.
Yeah. It's mutual. I think it's mutually beneficial more because they come into the marriage with open minds.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I feel like if you go into a
Yes.
marriage with a closed heart and a closed mind, whatever happens, that marriage is doomed.
Oh, yes.
Diba? Pag hindi
Yes.
ka open-minded,
Yes.
diba?
You know,
Hard thing.
and if your husband or your wife is so generous that she would give you this and that, by the way, under the law, you cannot donate so much during the marriage.
What do you mean by
Yes.
that?
There is donation that is not allowed
Like what
in a
exactly?
marriage. Like gifts of moderate or like personal properties, like say jewelries,
Jewelry,
personal
yeah.
properties,
Oo.
but not real properties or a lot of real properties or big properties. There is a protection for couples into donating properties like that prior to the marriage. Prior to the marriage, yes, it can be done, but during the marriage, no, during the marriage.
What is the logic behind that? What are they trying to avoid with that type of rule or law?
It could be avoidance of obligations. Like if you have creditors, it could be a donation to conceal properties. Yes, something like that.
I see. Are there certain, like, yung mga ganon, personal property, what is excluded, by the way, from what we call community property? Are there exclusions to that in a marriage?
Oh, yes. The one that I told you, exclusive properties are those that you acquire by inheritance.
Anything else
And
aside from
donation.
that?
Donation
also.
Yes, coming from the property. You know, when a property is being donated to you, sometimes coming from your family, that's for a reason. You have to have a reason for the acceptance of the donation. And also for the inheritance, it's the same way. If it's inheritance, it belongs to your family. So you will not share the one that your forefathers have worked hard, something like that.
Okay, I understand. Now, we've already talked about prenup. Now, let's talk about, I guess, the actual annulment already.
Oh, annulment.
Diba? I mean, that's something that, have you done a lot of annulment cases?
Oh, not, I don't know, I can't count. But
Medyo madami.
yes,
Madami-dami na.
madami-dami na rin. Oo.
So, let's start with my first question. But ready ka na. When a marriage is annulled, how is property divided between the spouses?
You know, I mentioned a while ago about special co-ownership.
Yeah.
Co-ownership when it comes to common law husband and wife, it's the same when a marriage has been dissolved for being void. It has been declared by the court as a void marriage. For example, the ground is psychological incapacity.
Yeah.
That's the usual ground being filed.
The usual
by,
one?
Yeah, that's the usual ground.
Oh, God.
For void marriages. Petition for declaration of nullity of marriage on the ground of psychological incapacity. That's Article 36 of the Family Code. Everybody knows that. If the marriage has been dissolved and the ground is psychological incapacity, then the marriage is void. So it's no longer a property regime under absolute community, because when you say a marriage is void, that means as if it did
Never
not
existed.
exist. Yes, it never existed. So in a void marriage, there is this special co-ownership wherein the property are identified. You have your inventory, and then liquidation, and then distribution or partition, as if you have a co-ownership. It's a co-owned property.
Oh gosh.
So that's how it
Why is it
started.
usually attorney na psychological incapacity yung sinasabi
Ground.
nila ground for annulment?
Psychological incapacity is a separate provision that is available because we don't have absolute divorce in the Philippines. When you say psychological incapacity, then, there are a lot of jurisprudence nowadays on the definition of psychological
Yeah.
incapacity. But if you're filing for a petition and then your ground is a psychological incapacity, we're talking about properties here.
Yes.
It's part of the requirement under the law and the rules of procedure when it comes to filing nullity cases that you have to identify all the properties of the couple when you file for your petition.
I see.
It's a requirement. You have to submit and present to court a list of all your properties. So, minsan, eto yung nagiging problema pag nagpa-file ng mga nullity cases. Because if you noticed, yung mas maraming mga properties, mas mahirapan maghiwalay.
Yes.
Because when you file, you have to make a list, an inventory, and then later on, maliliquidate yan, pagkahatian yan. But ito yung catch na sinasabi ko, when you're going to file for nullity cases, there's always the so-called filing fees. Siyempre, magbabayad ka sa court.
Yes.
And then they will assess based on the amount of the properties involved. So, may corresponding amount yon, assessment yon. Depende kung saan i-apply ng kung saan court, yung kaninong jurisdiction. Meron tayo dyan sa Supreme Court, sila na yung nagbibigay ng schedule ng mga fees. Pwedeng sa zonal valuation.
Ooh.
But usually, it's the current zonal value of the property. Sometimes they would require a certification. But if it's for family cases or nullity cases, it's the market value of the property.
siya.
But regardless, either the zonal value or the market value, then you should be prepared for paying for all these fees.
Why does it take long? It takes long for people who have a lot of properties because of the simple inventory? Or is it because some they tend to not declare at the start?
Oh, yes, of course. Other petitioners would not declare to do away the probably payment of the fees if
Exactly.
there's a lot of properties involved, or they just don't want to share some properties that they have. Because there are instances like I've encountered in the past, there are a couple that, let's say, for example, the wife, she doesn't have a list of what they own.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't know. If she's the petitioner, she can only declare what she knows. So sometimes they would go for, instead of a nullity, they would file for legal separation. That's different. You remain married. The court will just allow you to separate in bed and board, but you cannot remarry. And then your properties, they will be for complete separation of properties, depending upon your request or your prayer before the court.
So my question is, with that difference, when should a couple be filing for annulment versus legal separation?
Okay, that depends upon the petitioner. If she wants to remain, I use a she because most of the time, default to a gender. Because most of the time, the wives are the women are the petitioners in cases for nullity. Majority, in my experience.
Okay.
We have male petitioners also,
but it's a bit more seldom.
Yes.
Is there a reason for that though?
Ang mga Pilipino kasi na mga lalaki, alam naman natin, right? Kadalasan yan, psychological, emotional abuse. Yan
lahat
yung
na lang ng abuse.
Lahat ng klase ng abuse. We have our vows laws also.
Yes.
Oh. So, alam na rin ng karamihan yan. Alam na yan. Oo. Iba-iba yan. Economic abuse, psychological abuse.
Because of our cultural setup
emotional,
also of
physical
marriage.
abuse. Yes, but I have cases like male petitioners and they have valid grounds also in filing these cases. And they were granted also.
What
like
practical reasons?
Mostly, I do not recommend long distance relationship,
Ooh.
especially in marriage.
Naman.
Mahirap talaga.
But actually, I experienced.
Yun yung karamihan talaga. Most of the cases I've handled for nullity cases, like except for legal separation, no. For legal separation, kadalasan yan yung mga marami-raming properties na pinag-uusapan
Yes,
diyan.
yes.
Ayaw na nilang maghiwalay. Mas mahirap later on para sa kanila.
Yes.
If you're going to
yes.
explain the consequence of filing one, they would choose legal separation.
I
But
understand.
mostly for our cases, yung mga nullity cases, kadalasan OFWs.
Ah.
Mm.
It's so hard din naman if you're gonna get married
OFWs,
tapos
yes.
you're like living in two different
At
cities.
kadalasan, sila yung nag-a-acquire ng mga properties dito.
Correct.
Parang they would open a business or buy a home and then another property, investment property,
Yeah.
mga ganon. They would do that and then yung si respondent, si guy, may nakilala abroad
Ay my God.
kasi magkahiwalay.
Gusto ko yung
matagal.
nag-default ka din ng gender. Si
Oo nga,
guy,
si
may
guy.
nakilala bro.
And then, si girl na nandito naman sa Philippines, minsan pag uwi ni guy, may iba na si girl.
Parang buntis na bigla.
Oh,
ganon.
yes.
It happens.
So, ganyan it happens. So, ganon ang mga kadalasan, karamihan. Pero hindi ko naman nila lahat. It's not all. Meron naman tayong mga couples dyan na can sustain the marriage and their love even if they're away. Kasi, syempre, diba? Working
Correct.
si guy.
Are there common mistakes though that you see people make regarding property when filing for annulment? Specific to property.
What do you mean mistake? Like,
Parang maybe
I don't.
people who might not be as informed and they plan, okay, they want to get a
If someone is planning to
Yes.
file for nullity, it's important for the petitioner to identify the properties subject to liquidation later on. And for me, if it could be done, like for the respondent,
Yeah.
if they can talk about properties only, settlement of the properties before filing, because
So may
you have
usapan na
to
silang
prepare.
dalawa, dapat.
But not the nullity itself, not the filing of the case, because under Philippine law, that's not allowed.
Yeah.
Collusion is not allowed. But to talk about properties, support for the children, because properties are involved when it comes to support. Properties, not only real properties, but bank accounts, personal properties, whatever that could be used for the support of the family. You can have an agreement pertaining to that. If that has been settled, you can attach whatever agreement you have before you file your petition for nullity in court. So that won't be an issue anymore. The issue,
Speeds up the process.
Yes. You just tell the court that there has been a settlement regarding the property, or there has been a separation of property, or you file first a judicial separation of property if there are a lot of properties involved. So that will be a separate issue. The issue on your ground to nullify your marriage will be the one to be concentrated on in that particular petition.
Everything else is like either an attachment or the aforementioned agreement, and the court will concentrate on the actual nullification of the marriage.
Yes. But under the rules, it's really a requirement for you to disclose everything, all that you have. That's part of rules and the law before filing and during filing. And then after, all these properties must be identified. But you can choose not to include if you have an agreement already.
I see.
Regarding the properties.
Oh.
And also when it comes to support and custody, for example, of the children, you can present in your petition and manifest before the court that there's already a settlement. There's already an agreement pertaining to custody, support, and separation of properties.
I always hear people say na, ay nako, magpapaanal, ang tagal niyan.
Oh, yes. Matagal
Why does
yan.
it take long?
Because you have to prepare for the filing. And then when it goes to court, the procedure is that, unlike in a regular civil case, that it will be called for a pre-trial and then the trial of the case, and then after that decision, here you have to inform the summons, or it's called a notice to the other party, or a summons for you to file an answer. There is a waiting period for that. For one, you have to wait. And then another, just like in an ordinary civil case.
Yeah.
And then another one is a collusion investigation. So the parties are called by the prosecutor to ask if there's no collusion that is happening between the two of them. So, to make sure that there's no collusion between the parties. Kasi pwedeng pag-usapan yan eh.
Yeah.
Mm.
I
Sige,
know.
mag-file na lang tayo ng annulment. Kung inaalaw ng batas natin yan, it's like an absolute divorce.
Yeah.
Consented na yon.
Yeah.
But we don't have that. Ganun pinoprotektahan ng batas natin. Yung sanctity talaga ng
The
marriage,
marriage.
ando doon. Yung definition of that, na makikita talaga natin, yun yung gustong protektahan ng batas. Kaya ganon. And then,
Understood.
when it goes to court, magpa-file, magpa-present ka ng evidence mo. If it's psychological incapacity, the others would go and get their own clinical psychologist for
For an
that.
assessment.
Yes, for the psychological evaluation assessment, for the declaration of the other spouse or both spouse as psychologically incapacitated to comply with essential marital obligations. That's how it goes.
This is a side question already, but
Yes.
because both of you and I have psych degrees. Nagkataon lang,
Oh,
both are
oo nga.
undergrad. I'm also BA Psych.
Yes.
In the psychological assessment, what has to be declared by the psychologist? Parang is there a specific, parang sasabihin niya, this person is not
Yes,
fit. Parang
for
ganon.
example, that the respondent is psychologically incapacitated to comply with essential marital obligations. Parang he is diagnosed with, for example, narcissistic personality disorder. That's
Okay.
common.
Bipolar. Yung mga
Yes,
ganon.
yes,
Okay,
or
okay.
histrionic personality disorder.
So it's mostly
something like that.
personality disorders that are cited.
Yes, it says there that it should be incurable. So there are requirements also for you to be declared one. That's the psychological evaluation under our law now. It's an option for you to comply, for the respondent to be declared one, or even both parties.
Yeah.
You can file your petition for nullity on the ground of both parties being psychologically
Ay, wow,
incapacitated.
nagsama pa.
Yes, pwede yon. Oo. It can be like that.
Does it
Because
speed
the assessment
things?
or the evaluation of the psychologist can mean an assessment declaring only one, or she'll be able to find out both.
My goodness. Wait, I'm sorry we didn't get to cover this earlier. But what are the other grounds to nullify a marriage pala? Aside from psychological incapacity.
Minority. Sure thing. Psychological incapacity is common. Bigamy. Bigamous marriage.
Oh.
If there is an existing marriage, and then
walang Senomar.
no nullity, no declaration of nullity, you enter into another marriage, existing marriage, the subsequent marriage is void. It's a void marriage. That can be a ground. Lack of marriage license. Yes. Lack of marriage
Parang
license.
kung na nagpakasal kayo,
one.
pwede nyo na file.
The requirements prior to getting married, yes, that's a void marriage, because these are the essential requirements. Lacking the essential requirements, such as a marriage license, you cannot claim a valid marriage. But here, under our law, also in the Philippines, even if your ground is for a marriage to be declared void,
Mhm.
if there's no declaration, you cannot just claim that your marriage is void and then you can do whatever you want because it's a void marriage. Like, for example, there are cases like you got married, and then while your marriage is at 16, you married for the second time, and there are others who married for the third time. And then the second marriage would say that this marriage is a void marriage because it's a bigamous marriage. So that will make, for example, third marriage, it's a claim that it's valid, something like that. If in the thought, if you're thinking about something like that, it's not, for as long as there's no decree or a declaration that a marriage is void, it's still there. It can still be covered as a bigamous marriage if you remarry.
Say a married couple is in the process of annulment. One of them acquires a property in the
Mhm.
time of the processing of the annulment. How would this work given the circumstances?
It still belongs to the two of them later on because it's still a property acquired within the marriage, during the marriage. But if it will be acquired thereafter, after the decree,
Okay.
of the absolute nullity of the marriage, that's a different story already.
What
It's a
is
separate property already.
what is
Anything that is brought into the marriage while it's pending, it will be part of the co-ownership later on
okay?
if it would be granted.
Depending
Yes.
if
If
maano talaga sila.
if it will be denied, then go back to the absolute community of property. If the marriage took place after 1988,
Eh,
but if not,
conjugal.
conjugal partnership.
Capital gains.
Capital gains.
Broker na broker.
Broker na broker.
CG, yung nag-isip ko, Diyos ko, Lord. From all the answers I'm hearing from you, a lot of it is truly, you can see Philippine law really trying to the sanctity
The sanctity of marriage
Yeah.
to protect the
That
marriage.
yeah, that's kind of what I'm hearing
Yes.
from all your answers. It always goes back to that.
Yes. Probably because we're a Christian, a Catholic
A
country.
Catholic country. Yeah, I do see that. I think you answered this already, but are there legal ways, just to repeat it, are there legal ways for couples to divide property without going through lengthy court procedures?
They can enter into an agreement. They can talk about it. Yes, without going to court. But for it to be valid separation, I would really suggest that the couple would go for the judicial separation of properties. But settlement also is possible. Most of the time, couples go for judicial separation of properties because they could not agree. They could not sit down and come up with an agreement. They could not settle on their own. If both are cooperative and they can somehow talk about
Come to terms.
yes, yes, then probably it could be done like that. But seldom that I see couple like that.
Talaga.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. May nahihirapan talaga.
Oo. Parang they
Kasi
feel like
walang,
one is not
you know,
fair or
no,
whatever.
no couple would go for a separation of property and settle kung okay sila.
That's true.
Hmm.
Kaya nga sila napunta
kaya nga
doon
nagpunta doon. Kaya sila, they would sit down and they talk about it kasi hindi sila okay. They're not
At
in good
expect
terms.
mo sila na mag-usap sila
At expect mo
talaga.
sila mag-usap, especially when you're talking about wealth.
Ayun na.
Wealth.
Ay nako, ikaw
Well,
gagawin ko talaga host dito.
especially no,
Basta
really
as long as
difficult.
anytime, I think, I mean, in when
You know,
money's involved,
yes,
nag-iba
yes.
na yung ugali ng mga
But
tao.
sometimes pride would also come in.
Oh, yeah. Well, pride and money go hand in hand, I
Oh,
feel.
yeah. Oh,
I'm sure you've seen it many times.
oh, many times.
over.
Many times. But I would always suggest you can't buy peace of mind. You can't buy that. So,
You can't buy sleeping well at night.
oh, yes, of course. Oh, I tell that to my clients sometimes. So somehow they could agree if there's a need to. But if not, it's okay to go to court also because the court can help.
Yeah. And
We have other venue where they could do the mediation
yeah.
for a compromise agreement too.
My final question for you, attorney, would be: is there a case that has parang stuck with you, or any memorable case that you've encountered? That
This is so funny. Yes.
parang meron na agad.
Meron na agad. Yeah, because I can't forget this case. I have a case in Pasig. It's a vowsy case and
Okay.
a nullity case also. So we're preparing for a nullity case, but it's a vowsy case that we have filed. And then,
vowsy, for our listeners, is violence against women and children.
So RA 9262. That's RA 9262. So we have filed that case. Trial is ongoing. I have attended like 3 hearings already. And then all of a sudden, the judge asked if the parties can talk about the custody of the children. And then I allowed them to talk, also the other counsel, and they were talking. It's so funny. We were talking, me and the the opposing counsel, and then they were talking. And then after a while, I was asking, oh, what was the result of the conference? And then everything is okay. We will talk again. So I told them, okay, you can talk again. But
This was not in your presence. Like they talked
yes, they
separately.
just talked separately,
Okay.
but we weren't looking at them.
Okay.
Yes. And then I went to court, and then all of a sudden, when they're there, I was looking for the opposing counsel, but he said, I'm also looking for my client. Yes. So they were there, and then they reconciled right there and there. Yes. So we don't know what to tell the court. Uh, but
Yeah.
for me, I was surprised, but at the same time, I was glad. I was glad that if the couple could just maybe talk about things, then they could reconcile, but only if the grounds for the cases that were filed are not physical abuse,
Yeah.
psychological or economic abuse, everything can be talked about. But for physical abuse that involves already,
It's a safety already.
yes, yes, of course, a matter of life,
And a lot of those
preservation of
cases,
life.
the moment that any sort of physical abuse is happening, it goes down. It's a slippery slope.
Oh,
It
yeah.
can go bad so fast.
Yes.
Diba? But I mean, as an attorney that has handled so many annulment cases, i- you believe a lot of things can be talked about.
Of course, of course. I have cases also like they remarried.
Oh gosh.
Yes.
As an after.
After. Like 6 years after?
Oh my.
Yes. Yes.
I love them.
Yes.
I see my
There's
future.
this
Joke, I'm
one.
just kidding.
No.
Just joking.
Oh, yes. And then I have also a client. And then I have another client and then they met. We were in court. Oh, this is
Okay.
my client for another case, and this is my client for another case.
Naging sila.
But yes, naging sila.
Naging sila.
Yes, ito yung mga hindi ko makakalimutan.
Oh
And
my
then,
God.
inayos ko rin yung kasal nila.
Oh
Gano'n.
my God.
And they're still married.
May marriage settlement sila.
No, wala silang marriage settlement. Oo.
Tara.
It's okay sa kanila. Oo. Tapos, I attended their wedding.
Oh no
Oo,
way.
nakakatuwa.
Kasi technically, ikaw yung nag-matchmake sa kanila eh.
Yeah, at hanggang ngayon sila pa rin. Nakakatuwa.
I love
They
it.
met, tapos naging sila. Nagkahiwalay na sila, meron ng decree. After 6 years, nagkabalikan sila.
Oh my God.
So, you'll never know.
I mean, life is long.
Of
Life
course.
is long. The last part of our little podcast is we do a property quickfire. Alam mo yung fast talks with Kuya Boy.
Oh,
Yung
okay. We
ganon.
have something
So
like
I'm
that.
just going to ask you, this just
Okay.
at the top on the top of your mind, like
Okay.
tell me what you choose. Okay. Joint bank account or separate bank accounts?
Separate bank.
Prenup or postnup?
Prenup.
Family home or investment property?
Family home, because I'm kind of sentimental.
My justification. Living together before marriage, yes or no?
No.
I love it. Attorney, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Oh, thank you
We
so
learned so
much.
much today.
I hope.
Yung pinaka gusto ko talaga is yung 6 years tapos nagkabalikan
Sa
sila.
6 years, nagkabalikan sila. Oo.
So to anyone else who was listening to this, if this helped you, please don't forget to follow or subscribe to the Property Podcast PH. You can also visit wealthproperties.ph to browse listings and book a free consultation with one of our free real estate specialists. Catch you guys in the next episode.